All right, how's everybody doing tonight? Welcome to Make Comics Fun again. We are back for, I think this is episode 62. So we've been doing this for a little while. I just wanted to talk about the Punisher tonight. Why I've been thinking about the Punisher, just because some of the stuff that I've been reading. And before I get too far, Pedro is in the chat. We got a couple of people there. If someone could give me a shout out in the chat, let me know that you can hear me. That would be great. But usually what I do is talk a little while about my topic, and then I just answer the questions from the chat. If you have any questions at all, you can ask them. Just put a tag there of my name or a question mark, so I can distinguish in the chat what is for me and what is not. And you can ask me any questions about any of my books. PB&J, how you doing? Good. Thank you very much for letting me know you can hear me. But if you have any questions for any of my books that I independent books that I do, links for those are in the description. About any of my videos that I do during the week about what we're talking about tonight, just put them in the chat, and I'll try to get to the end of the chat before our hour is up and get everybody's questions answered. Although we might do a little less than an hour tonight, not really sure. I always try to go to the hour mark, but I might have to leave a couple of minutes early tonight. Anyways, so I really wanted to think of, or talk about the Punisher tonight, because I was thinking about the character itself. And quite honestly, I was thinking about the character in terms of, well, there's a line from the most recent Judge Dredd movie where the psychic is basically meeting Judge Dredd for the first time, but he's behind a wall and she couldn't see him. And she was asked to describe the man that was there. And she said, there's violence, but there's something underneath the violence, control. And that's always what I thought the Punisher should be. That is a person that is very violent, but is in control of the violence at the same time. And so that's my primary thought about how the Punisher should be written, in the fact that, he is someone who has lost everything in his life, and this is all he has left. But at the same time, that is why he has a violent streak in him. Well, he was an ex-Marine and, in the Vietnam War. So he knows how to deal with people that don't follow the rules. We'll just put it that way. He knows how to be a soldier. But at the same time, so he's akin to violence, we'll put it that way. But at the same time, there is control there. And it's not just even a soldier's control. There's that level of it there. But the control of it at the same time is something much more primal, if you ask me, something so that his violence never gets beyond a point of where he wants it to go. It never gets out of his control. Put it that way, because that's where the control comes in. He has his limits, he has his lines that he won't cross. And, they may be a lot different from most superheroes, but at the same time, they're there. And to me, that's Frank Castle. That's the Punisher. And while I was thinking about it, John and I were just talking over at Comic Book Team Up we did on John's channel tonight, just an hour ago. We were talking about the Punisher for a couple of minutes, and I thought a little bit more of what I was going to talk about tonight, which is going to be fairly short tonight. But I also thought about the Punisher in terms of a Black Knight. Basically, everybody, when they say the Dark Knight, the Black Knight, everybody thinks about Batman. But to me, I think the Punisher is more what you would get with a Black Knight, in the fact that he's someone who has his own moral code and he has something to defend, and he's not going to move from the position that he's in, and he defends it with his life. And that is, to me, a very good description of Frank Castle as well. And of course, we have the problem with the Punisher today is that no one wants to really publish Punisher books. Marvel has pretty much given up on the Punisher, trying to destroy the character before they stopped using the character. But again, the reason why I wanted to talk about the Punisher tonight was the fact that, well, first of all, I'd like you all to put in the chat what you think is the essence of the Punisher, because it can be many different things, and it has been expressed in many different ways throughout the different comics that the Punisher has been in for a long time. But I remember the 1990s, in the 1980s, when, well, first of all, the first Punisher miniseries came out, and that was a really big thing, and it seemed like forever. after that miniseries had come out, which we're seeing some of the art in the background of that miniseries, the Mike Zeck stuff. It was almost an eternity between that book and when he actually got an ongoing series. It seemed like it when you were a kid, anyways. And I bought a lot of Punisher books because that was the thing you did. I was a collector back then as well. And Punisher War Journal. Oh, let's bring up some covers here. Give me a second. I have cover browser open. Let's see. We'll put on some cover. Let's see. Give me 1 second so I can share this screen. There's, and I'll make it a little bigger for everybody to see. But some beautiful Punisher covers or covers with Punisher on them. This is cover browser, so it jumps all over the place when you just put in the Punisher. Punisher War Journal was one of the things. Again, that was the title. I loved John Romita Jr. Back in the day, but his Punisher was not something, I don't know. It was not something that I think went with his art style. I loved John Romita Jr. In X-Men and to some extent Spider-Man, because he did a bunch of Spider-Man different stories. But the fact is that I bought a lot of these comics back in the day, back in the 80s, back in the 90s. And let's see. And the thing was that it wasn't my favorite character in the world. And I never thought to myself that I would be writing. I never thought to myself, I want to write a Punisher story. That was something that never occurred to me. When I thought about writing comics and how I wanted to write comics and all that kind of stuff, I wanted to write just in general. Punisher was never a character that I actually wanted to write. It never actually entered into my mind. But when I was thinking about it just the other day with the idea of violence and control, and how a person who loses everything can have that line when he has nothing. Basically, Frank has nothing left to live for after his wife and his children are murdered. But he has a line, and he will act on that line. And when I started to think about it in those terms, in the old way that I had set it up in my mind and looked at it in a new light, I could actually see myself writing a Punisher story now. I don't know why, but from the very first of my channel, most people were always asking me, cover the Punisher, talk about the Punisher. What is the Punisher? Because I talk about heroes and talk about a hero as a paragon of virtue. And even to the extent that when I talk about, Conan the Barbarian, I always think of Conan the Barbarian as a hero, basically a hero in training, because I look at him from the last story in his canon backwards. Because the funny thing is, the way that Robert E. Howard wrote was that Conan being a king was the first story that he wrote of Conan. And so I always look at Conan as a hero because he's a lawful good king who will not abandon his people, even go to his death in order to do so. And I look at the older stories, that is to say, when he is a younger man and a thief, a reaver, all these kinds of things, he's building up to become that heroic monarch that he is within those stories, which are later in time, but some of them were the first ones published. And so, I think about Conan as a hero and in a virtuous sense. But I also think that Frank Castle can be put in a virtuous hero role insofar as the fact that, again, if he has those traits of, let's say, a Black Knight, and a Black Knight doesn't have to be on the evil side. A Black Knight can simply be someone who is defending something that most other knights would not think about defending, or in a way that most knights would not think about defending. And again, got to go back to his motivation. And I think that the motivation for Frank Castle is much more, if I ever was to write such a character. And I think the true essence of the character, but this is just me, of course, is the fact that he has that violence and control at the same time, which again could be something that is utilized in a virtuous way. Because we talk about the idea of just punishment at the very least. Anyways, that's my take on the Punisher for about 10 minutes. I usually go about 20 minutes, but I'm trying to cut down tonight because we might have to go early. So I'm just going to scroll up to the top of the chat and see who's here, and we'll answer some questions if anybody has questions. Let me just put on a couple of more of these beautiful Punisher covers. Let's see if we get any more Mike Zeck. Punisher. No. Punisher and Batman. No, these are all toys. There's some nice Mike Zeck right there. 9.8. Punisher number 3 of 4 in the limited series. All right, so scrolling up, let's see who is in the chat. Pedro is here. Pedro is the first one here, and Pedro says, for an answer, Punisher, well, we'll put this up on the screen. Punisher is what we should aspire to be when someone hurts an innocent. Okay. Like I said, put in the chat what you think the essence of the Punisher is, because I honestly want to delve into this idea of how different he can be as a character who's writing him. And, having interviewed and spoken with Mike Baron on a number of different channels for mine and over at John's Longbox, the person who popularized a lot of the Punisher canon and is still writing Punisher-like stories with his own version of the character, which is Patriotic American, I do believe. Yeah, I got to see very much the heart of what the Punisher was when he was in the hands of Mike Baron. Anyways, scrolling down, see who else is here. PB&J is here. Let's see. Scrolling down. PB&J said, Frank deserves an hour. Yeah, Frank does deserve an hour. I just don't know if I can give it to him. Let's see. Jewel has a very simple answer. He says, the Punisher is Frank Castle. Indeed. Punisher is Frank Castle. We looked at some covers there just a few minutes ago when they tried to, it was just a thing, I think late 90s, where they tried to switch up Punisher for his female protege, but that never stuck, of course. Let's see. Jewel says also, let's see, put this up. Marines would never follow the rules. They've always been the best of boys. Okay. All right. I don't know any Marines, actually. I know plenty. Oh, I know soldiers, but I know grunts and army, but I don't know any Marines, quite honestly. Let's see. Scrolling down, Pedro says, it's like the song says, when you don't have nothing to lose, you win. All right. Scrolling down. Let's see. PB&J says, justice for those the law overlooks or can't touch. Yes, that would be one of the things. Again, going back to 80s stories for Punisher, that was supposed to be the 80s take on what the Punisher was and why he was put in his own book and why he was given this idea of he was a hero as well. It's the fact that these mobsters that he went after would, because of corruption, would get away with murder, get away with killing people left, right, and center. So he was justice for those who had escaped justice. So yeah. Let's see. PB&J also says the Warzone #1 cover is iconic. I think I have a couple of issues of that. I think I bought like 3-4 of those when it came out, but I agree. And I love John Romita Jr., but at the same time, his work on the Punisher was never something like, it drew me to buy the Punisher more readily than I would normally. Although, like I said, being a collector, I bought a lot of Punisher, but at the same time, he was getting very blocky at that point and switching over his style. Let's see. Scrolling down. Pedro says he loves the War Diaries. Okay. Michael is here. How you doing, Michael? Michael says the 90s Spider-Man cartoon had Punisher appear twice, once to fight Spider-Man and again to help Blade fight Spider-Man when he turned into Man-Spider. I don't know if I know the entire story, but if I remember correctly, he didn't actually have guns. He had like ray guns in those books or in those cartoons, right? There we go. There's Punisher War Journal. Let's scroll down. Oh yeah, there's one of the crossovers of Punisher and Ghost Rider, which was one of the things that, Punisher and Ghost Rider, the edgy 90s, there you go, wrapped up in one. Let's see, scrolling down. Logic's Finest says, unbridled rage, aggression, and gruesome violence for the sole purpose of putting down bad guys. I love the Punisher. He has zero qualms with using violence to put down bad guys only. See, that's why I wanted to talk to you guys about this, because everybody has their own version of Frank Castle that they like, their own idea in his head why he does stuff, because he's a bit laconic. He doesn't explain himself too much. But I I would think to myself, when I think about the Punisher as violence plus control, I would think of him as anything but unbridled. I would think the whole thing is bridled by the fact that he's not seeking revenge; he's seeking justice for the fact that everything was taken away from him. But again, I like your take on it, Logic's Finest. Scrolling down. PBNJ also says he lives for the memory. He lives for their memory and to punish the guilty. Yep, lives for his family, the memory of his family. Scrolling down. Let's see. Scrolling down to see if there's any more comments for me. A lot of people talking about Spider-Man. PBNJ says Mike Baron is my number one Punisher writer. Yeah, I think Mike Baron would probably be the number one Punisher writer out there. Well, I wouldn't go so far as to say he loves the character, but he loves the idea of writing different kinds of characters and ones that don't really fit into the mold of what they're usually supposed to be. That's what his, I think, Nexus books are all about. It's like we're in the mid 80s, early 90s, and it's all blue sky superheroes in the 80s. And then he says, okay, I'm gonna put Nexus out there, who basically has superpowers but kills people. So yeah, again, Mike Baron, phenomenal writer, and I think he's very much attracted to the idea of doing different kinds of heroes and exploring the idea of what makes up a man. Scrolling down. Jewel says the essence of the Punisher is justice without the libtard nonsense about human rights and no killing. The true American hero, he actually stops the bad, unlike many superheroes, namely Batman. Okay, very good. Because you could see that parallel of the Punisher and Batman coming out in the stories for the Punisher. You know, it's basically Marvel's version of Batman in the fact that you have a person who doesn't have any superpowers and then goes out and fights crime. So what is he going to do, and what is he going to use as his weapons of choice? Whereas Batman is much more a detective and uses gadgets and things like that. The Punisher is just straight up, I'm a soldier and I have a gun, or multiple at the same time, and he uses body armor, etc., etc. So yeah. Let's see. Scrolling down. Jewel also says, I only read the Garth Ennis Punisher and seen some movies and shows. I never actually watched the show. I've seen things about the shows, but the movies, I think that what is his name? Oh, for the life of me, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Let's see. There's a picture of him right up here somewhere. Let's see. This right. Thomas Jane. Yes, Thomas Jane. To me, was the version of the Punisher that actually resonated with me the most in the format of television and movies. But at the same time, I really like. I don't know if anyone has actually seen it. I'm sure some of you probably have, but Thomas Jane did also a secondary role as Punisher in a very short, it's like 10-minute, I don't know what you would even call it, a 10-minute story that they shot about the Punisher, and it's up online. What's the name of it? Dirty Laundry. That's it is. And to me, that Punisher which he portrays in Dirty Laundry is even much more the Punisher than he portrayed in the Punisher movie that he was in. So yeah, I think Thomas Jane in the Punisher Dirty Laundry is probably the most accurate version of Punisher that you'd ever see on screen. Scrolling down. Let's see. Jewel also says, we wouldn't have an Italian, Russian, or Jewish mob problem if we had the Punisher like president at the time. Okay. I agree that I don't think you would ever see Frank Castle be a politician by any means, but yeah, that would certainly decomplicate things when it came to crime. Let's just put it that way. Scrolling down. PB&J says, I'm going back and buying back issues, probably some that I sold back in the 90s to replace to the place I'm now buying them from. That is funny. You sold them to a comic store and now you're buying them back. Yeah, life is funny. Let's see. PB&J also agrees with me. He is bridled, though. That's what I would say. I think of him as bridled. Michael also has a comment. He says, in the 90s Spider-Man cartoon, everyone had laser guns. Yeah. The Punisher, the cops, the criminals, everyone. Yeah, very much of its time, just like the G.I. Joe, because the G.I. Joe, from the very beginning, it's all red lasers and blue lasers, right? Let's see. Pedro says he read Punisher War Journal in Spanish. Oh, that would be interesting. That would really be interesting to read it in Spanish. Let's see. Scrolling down. Tony is here in the chat as well. Nice to see you again tonight, Tony. Let's see. We're talking the Punisher. Michael says, which was always weird to me because in the 90s Batman cartoon, everyone had normal guns. Yeah, it was the 90s Batman cartoon was supposed to be something unto itself. And I think they accomplished that. Let's see. Tony says, RJ, what are your favorite live action interpretations of the Punisher? Mine is Ray Stevenson. I just talked about that, Tony. My favorite iteration of it would be Thomas Jane, and specifically in Dirty Laundry. So, which is a short. Let's see. Scrolling down. Sound Graver's here. How you doing? She says, I know next to nothing about the Punisher. Stop by to say hello. Hello to you, Sound Graver. Scrolling down. I'm talking about the Punisher in terms of a Black Knight tonight. So it was just something that struck me during the week, and I thought I would talk about it and flush it out a little bit more and get everybody else's take on what they think the Punisher is and the motivations for the Punisher, because I have a scratching in the back of my mind to write that kind of a story. Whether or not it comes to pass, we never know, but I'm doing so many things at once. Let's see. Scrolling down, PB&J also says, the Batman who kills, you see, is the Batman who wins, aka the Punisher. Okay. But that's the thing. He may win technically, but it's not something that Frank Castle would ever aspire to. He doesn't want to win. He would rather there be nothing to punish. Ryan Banks, how you doing, Ryan? Says, RJ, most people have no personal experience with actual heartless, ruthless, violent criminals, so they cannot relate to a hero who must be extremely violent to defeat extremely violent criminals. That's a good way to look at it, Ryan, quite honestly. I had never thought of it that way. Could you see, well, to some extent, I think I answered my own question, but I'll ask it anyways. Can you see the Punisher existing anywhere outside of New York? I mean, Frank Castle existed in Vietnam and was a soldier, but can you picture the Punisher really existing, not just, for a couple of issues, not just for a cameo, but really existing, really living in any place besides New York? And the reason why I said I think I answered my own question, because I'm looking at, again, Private American from Mike Baron. And again, he knows the Punisher, has written the Punisher, has introduced elements of the Punisher that no one else introduced, and would be one of the top, if not the top person to write the number of Punisher stories that he did. Then he took him as the Punisher out of New York and put him basically on the border of 2023 America, 2024 America. So to some extent, like I said, I already answer my own question, because Mike Baron could see him outside of somewhere other than New York. But like Ryan says, the extreme violence that you get to see, it's only a New York thing that you might be able to see it in such a, we'll say, scum, or what is it? Hive of scum and villainy. Scrolling down. Tony's also says, RJ, who's the better anti-hero, the Shadow or the Punisher? I love the Shadow so much. I would have to go with the Shadow. But yeah, the Shadow has his twin pistols and he does shoot people. It depends on what iteration that you're going to look at the Shadow for. If you go to the radio plays and things like that, which I listened to on record from my library as a kid, he's very much toned down and he doesn't kill anybody. But if you go into the books and things like that, yeah, he'll shoot people. So I really like the Shadow. It's just something that was in my life long before the Punisher was. Let's see. Jules says liberals were trying to be edgy when they first made the Punisher, but now that their edge phase is over, they hate how inherently anti-liberal a character is. Again, had not thought of that, Jewel. That's a very good way to put it. But again, we have to enter into the situation, the fact that the Punisher wasn't meant to be a hero in any way when he first came out and appeared within Spider-Man comics. So the fact that it got flipped on its head and actually became a character that people thought of as a hero, I'm sure got under the skin of some people who created some of those early stories. Logic Finest says, RJ, have you seen the next Netflix show, The Punisher, starring John Bernthal? It's awesome. No, I like I said, I have seen bits and pieces of it and seen reviews of the entire series, but I have never actually watched that version of it. All right, scrolling down. We'll see what else we got here. Jules says, RJ, have you seen the movie The Black Knight? It's about a black guy that time travels to the Middle Ages. Not unless it's an older version of the story. To me, that sounds very familiar to like a 1960s movie that I watched at one point. But if it's a new thing, no, I haven't. Scrolling down, Logic's Finest says, RJ, let me clear something up. The Punisher has zero qualms using violence and the amount and type of violence. His control is that he only puts down bad guys. I guess my view on unbridled may differ. Okay. All right. We'll put that caveat in. That's a good way to describe it. Although, let's just say it's not so much as there's no limit to his amount and type of violence. It's the fact that since he's willing to kill, that's the ultimate ending point of any kinds of violence. I think that is almost like splitting hairs on the one hand, but on the other, I think it's a good distinction to make in the fact that he is a soldier, and being informed as a soldier, you're there to kill. And when you when you have done that, especially in the field of something like the Vietnam War, which is where Frank Castle was supposed to have been a soldier, although they tried to skip out on that in the last 10 years of Marvel. When you have that, let's say, unbridled area in order to have to be a soldier in, and that kind of a war to have to be a soldier in, I could see where you would go with unbridled for his violence. Let's see, scrolling down. PB&J says LA, Chicago, any number of third world cities. Let's just put it that way. I hadn't thought about that. Yes, you would probably work well in Chicago. I'm not sure about LA. It's too sprawling. Maybe if you let me put it this way. I could see him in LA as long as he had Micro with him. Micro being basically his armorer and being able to drive him around and all that kind of stuff. Chicago again, yeah, I could see it in Chicago, but I don't know. Let me put it this way. I think that New York goes into phases wherein it wants to clean itself up. I don't think LA actually ever gets to that, or sorry, I don't think Chicago ever actually gets to that point. So that's why I think in Chicago, you would see the Punisher being portrayed much more as J. Jonah Jameson portrays Spider-Man in New York. That is to say, they want him out of there, even though he's actually cleaning up the streets. Let's see. Scrolling down. Oh, wait a minute. I missed one of Tony's comments, but I'll go back to it. Michael says, The Black Knight is a late 90s movie starring Martin Lawrence. It's one of his best movies. No, then I haven't seen it. Tony says, RJ, do you think there's any chance to bring the Punisher in the current bring back the Punisher in the current day, or is he going to be one of those characters that has to hibernate for several years to make a comeback? I think he is going to have to hibernate for several years until we actually get some sanity back to the writing, and you actually get someone who can write a character that is so unapologetically violent without having to apologize for that. So you don't have anybody like that in Marvel right now. You just don't, as far as I'm concerned. So I think he will have to hibernate for a while. Let's see. Scrolling down. Jules says, RJ, favorite president, or I guess you're currently in Canada, so also favorite prime minister. I don't really have a favorite prime minister. Uh, I don't even want to go into that territory. Favorite president is probably the one we grew up with, which was Ronald Reagan, just because he was always there, and he was funny. But hey, not in the political sense. Just favorite president as remember him fondly. Let's see, scrolling down. Warren the Archangel is here. How you doing, Warren? Great to see you. Logic's Finest says LA is too sprawling. New York City is more than twice the size of LA. Really? I did not know that. I thought, well, I don't know. I thought LA was much more sprawling than New York would ever be. That's news to me, Logic's Finest. I would have to look at that. Scrolling down. PB&J says, RJ, how much do you think Marvel would take for the rights to the Punisher character? They don't want him, but how much would they want him for? I think that they, first of all, I have two lines of thought on that. Number one, they would never get rid of the Punisher character because he's already a character that has been in movies, and therefore they can put him into movies again with a minimum of fuss. Let's just put it that way. So that would be their reason for keeping the character and making sure the character stays alive in some form with Marvel Comics. Secondly, I would think of the Punisher right now as being the type of intellectual property that the Comic Code is. Funny enough. Now, I don't know if you know this, but the Comic Code Authority was actually bought by a bunch of, well, progressive, quote unquote, progressive people, so that it could never, ever be used again. That's literally why they bought it, so that no one would ever use it again and no one would ever have the rights to use it again. And they will defend the rights of that intellectual property that they own in order to make sure no one ever publishes under such conditions as the comic code ever again. So to me, I think that the ownership of Punisher by Marvel is something like that right now. It's they never want this character punished again or published again. Therefore, they will hold on to it and defend it tooth and nail to make sure that it never actually gets used again. Let's see. Scrolling down. Warren says, finally, I could get in here time, but been too busy lately. All right. Nice to see you here. Nonetheless, Warren, Calliope says Black Knight is loosely based on the Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court. That's what I'm thinking of. Okay. Yes. I'm not sure who was in the Connecticut Yankee when they did it. I think it was a Disney movie. I don't think it was a Danny Kaye movie, though. I can't remember at the life of me who was the person who played the main character in that. Let's see. PB&J says, I think LA has a larger land mass, but less people. Yeah, I'm talking more land mass. Let's see. Scrolling down. Logic says, Hollywood makes people think that Manhattan is New York City. Manhattan is only 1/5 of New York City. New York City is twice the size of LA and has over double the population. Okay. You're quite right, because to me, that's what I think of when I think of New York. I think of Manhattan, which I shouldn't do because, John lives in Long Island, right? John over John's Long Box, who I talk to every week. He talks about New York a lot. So I shouldn't think of it in those terms, but I always do. Jules says LA normally refers to LA area, though it's quite big. New York City and Los Angeles are about the same size. Okay. Logic also says Brooklyn, which is also 1/5 of New York City, has 90% of the population of LA. Really? These are new facts to me. Let's see. Oh, here's a good question or good comment. PB&J says my favorite skull logo iteration is the one in the bottom corner of those two covers. Yeah, bottom corner. We'll take PB&J off so we can show the bottom cover. Yes, the Punisher's symbol has morphed and changed a little bit over the years, but not too much. Oh, look. Honestly, what the heck is going on? it looked like there was Russian on the top of the cover because I don't remember these war journals 32 and 33, but it's not actually. It's just garbled English. Let's see. I want to scroll down and see if we can get into some different covers here with cover browser for the Punisher before we go any further. Oh, what the heck was the name of this character? I can't remember for the life of me. But he appeared only in a couple issues of Punisher. I think he mainly appeared in X-Force. Was it X Factor? No, it was the second iteration of X Factor, the Larry Stroman version of it, and that would be late '80s. But I can't remember the character's name. Let's see. I want to scroll up because I lost where I was. So let's see. Scrolling down. Tony says, Archie, have you read the Mac Bolan Executioner novel series? Jerry Conway obviously ripped out the Punisher for him. That's a good. I've never heard that. That's a good thing I should look up though. Let's see. Scrolling down. Let's see. Scrolling down. If we have any more questions here. Let's see. Scrolling down. People arguing about the difference of size between New York and LA in the comments. Warren says, by the way, before I forget, it's now a couple of hours to my birthday tomorrow. Oh, happy birthday. Happy birthday. Let's see. Scrolling down. PB&J says, there was just a Marvel Legends 2-pack with him and the Punisher. Yeah, I don't remember the character's name. It's something simple. Let's see. Scrolling down. Oops, my thing jumped. Let's see if I can get to where I was. Scrolling down. PB&J says, yes, the Punisher is a direct ripoff of the Executioner. Okay. All right. I couldn't confirm or deny that one at all. Well, here's the thing, guys. We've reached the end of the chat. So I honestly thought that this was going to be a short video anyways. I don't have too much to say on the Punisher, but I wanted to talk about the Punisher as a character and the motivation for that character with you guys, just to flush out a couple of my ideas about maybe using this character in the future. Oh, question mark is here. How you doing? He says, how does this type of character connect with the classic virtues? We talked about that a little earlier in the fact that basically, I think there would be a way to do it, although I couldn't tell you right off the top of my head what it would be. And certainly it would be connected to the fact that he is a soldier, and basically making him a soldier on a battlefield. Let's see. Bushwhacker. Thank you very much, Bushwhacker. PB&J. That is the name of the character, Bushwhacker. Let's see. Scrolling down. Actually not scrolling down because I got to the end of the chat. So thank you very much, everyone, for showing up tonight for this short live stream. I'm going to have to take off. I've been getting a little bit less sleep than I usually have over the last couple of weeks, and it's starting to take its toll on me. So it's getting pretty late here, and I figured that I would do the Punisher question tonight because I knew it would be a bit of a shorter video. So anyways, I will once again thank everybody for showing up, and we'll play the trailer once again for Fade to Blue. Link for that is in the description, and it's the sign up page for that. The books are not out yet. We are actually 2/3 of the way through everything. Well, for the art for those books, anyways. So just to let you know, we're moving at a fairly good clip for those books. So if you want, if you like the trailer for Fade to Blue, it's basically Indiana Jones in a film noir setting. So that's what the book is about, and the trailer that I'm going to play. So go over and sign up if it looks appealing to you at all. And I'll say goodnight to you. And thank you very much for everybody for showing up. All right.